you've heard before, I'm sure. Although, weirdly enough, I'm actually going to be talking about one that isn't on there, Christopher Columbus. He's actually attached somewhere else, which I kind of understand thematically why they did that, but I don't know, I just think it's a little silly to not include him in this chapter, so I'm just going to do it anyways. And so you know what else is, and PowerPoint is not responding. Interesting. Very interesting. That's okay. That should adjust. Oh, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. We don't want to look at that little tiny stuff. There we go. So if you go online, this is what you should see and get everything and be ready for the quiz on Wednesday. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and chit-chat with you guys as I present it to you, as everything's on there. But Wi-Fi is back. You should do that real quick. That's fine. And if you guys want to kind of follow along on your devices on the PowerPoints, they are in Edmodo now. You should see the same place where Notes is, Chapter 3. And it's a little bit weird because it's like Chapter 2, Chapter 1, or Section 2, Section 1, Section 3, for whatever reason, I don't know. But, you know, you can still access it. Oh, and it is a different file. That shouldn't matter, though, because it's an older version, so it can work backwards. Anyways, it's a little different. That's okay. So, to start off with, we're connecting to everything we talked about in Chapter 2. So, and really Chapter 1 as well. You guys know that there was a lot of luxury items that were sought after by the Europeans. Luxuries are anything that you don't really need to have, but just make it that much nicer. So, for instance, let's talk about the usage of the word spices. You've heard that, I presume, that, you know, the Europeans were searching for spices and all this kind of stuff. And while some of them are what we think of as spices, like pepper or cinnamon, others maybe not so much, such as sandalwood. That's like, really? Yeah. And the reason is these things weren't just used for flavoring food. They were also used for things like soaps and perfumes and all this kind of stuff. And if you think about it, perfumes are often portrayed in the Bible as being sort of unnecessary expenses. I mean, generally speaking, it's often attributed that only prostitutes would use makeup and perfumes so that they're more attractive. But in truth, there was a lot of very wealthy people who did that as well, and you can see where there's a lot of parallels, you know, that'll be used in that. I mean, there's a reason why in Dante's Inferno he basically equates politicians with prostitutes. So, you know, to quote, they both sell themselves. Anyways, so the thing is that these were luxuries, right? The thing is, they were also very expensive. How expensive? Well, to give you one example, pepper. You know, pepper, that little black stuff you put on like macaroni and cheese or whatever else. Okay, that was worth more than gold. It was that expensive, which begs the question, why? Why was pepper so darn expensive? Well, for one thing, if you think about it, it takes labor to make it. You've got to farm it, you've got to gather it, you've got to process it, and then you've got to ship it. And remember, it's originally from this area of Southeast Asia around India, Spice Island. So you've got the Mughal Empire here, and then as it's going to go to Europe, it passes through the Safavid Empire, and then it passes through the Ottoman Empire, and then it hits the Mediterranean where it's brought over into Venice, all these city-states we talked about with the Renaissance. And so each time it changes hands, they have to pay a tax on it. You guys know tariffs, right? That drives that price up and up and up. So it becomes incredibly expensive. How expensive? Well, to put it one way, let's talk about piracy. Let's talk about pirates. Because why wouldn't we talk about pirates, right? Here's the thing is, piracy was a major problem in the Mediterranean Sea. I know it seems like the Caribbean, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean is in the name, but it was also in the Mediterranean. Indeed, there was this really nasty group of pirates called the Barbary Corsairs. And they scared the hell out of everybody because essentially, not only did they steal everything on board your ship, but they also pressed every Christian they found into slavery. So it was a bad time. Now, that being said, Christians were also being pirates to the Ottomans as well. You guys remember from Suleiman the Magnificent, the video talked about the Knights of Rhodes and how they were pirates and they would chase Ottoman merchants. It's the same thing. So the point is, piracy was a big deal. So let's say that you had 3 ships, right? You were a merchant, you were going to try to make money off of this spice trade, and you were just going to go around all these Ottomans. Just through that, you're just going around, right? So you send them to India, right? You're going to go around the Cape of Good Hope, and you're going to bring it back. So let's say on the way, one of your ships, basically, they get stuck in an area with no wind called the doldrums, and basically everyone on board dies. You lose the ship. Okay, so now you're down to 2 ships. So both ships make it to India, and they start heading back. Along the way, one of those ships is attacked by pirates, and you lose everything. You lose the ship, you lose all the goods on it, you lose all your crew members to slavery. It's bad. So only 1 out of 3 ships makes it back, okay? The profit you make from selling the stuff it brings back is enough to cover all 3 ships, including the 2 you lost, and still make a profit. That's how much money is being made through the spice trade. So you can see why people are willing to do crazy things to try to make it around the Ottomans, to make it around the Safavids, and go straight to India. So there's a couple different thoughts about how to do that. And both have problems, okay? Now, I'm going to show you a list of words, and don't write anything down yet, because I'm going to explain what you really need to take away from this. So I explained here basically everything I just said. First up, what you really need to know. Number 1, the Europeans were looking to go around the Ottomans. That's it. They're trying to go around the Ottomans so they can get spices like pepper, cinnamon, etc. Sugar is going to be probably the single most important point about how. And I'll tell you, that is going to have a tremendous effect on the history of the world. Because the thing is, sugar, let's be honest, it's pretty much the principal luxury item that even today, we spend thousands, millions, maybe even billions, I don't know, tons of money on sugar. I mean, for goodness sakes, look at Halloween. How much money we spend on sugary treats is just astounding. I'm already planning for Halloween treats, and I'm excited about this. I mean, I was like the other day, we were in Menards getting stuff to fix my storm door, and I'm like, what do you think? Should we have Tootsie Roll Pops? You know, Tootsie Pops, things like that? Yeah, it's a bag. It's $8 for a bag. We're going to have them, because we got them. You know, you got to have your mix of chewy and nutty and chocolatey and fruit flavors. You got to have these things, otherwise you're basically a communist. I don't know. But you know, candy is important, right? We've established this. So sweet tooth is very, very important. This is going to have a major impact on the world. Just you wait and see. So basically, again, what you need from all this mess is, 1, we're trying to get to Southeast Asia, and we're trying to get around the Turks, and we're trying to get things like sugar. That's it. Okay. Now, let's look at the individual problems we face crossing the ocean. Because here's the thing: is I think sometimes we don't realize just how daunting a task this really is. Anyone ever been to the ocean? Have you like the beach, things like that? Okay. So have you ever been like standing on the beach and you look at it and it's just nothing? Just a whole wave of nothing. You turn around and okay, there's a hotel, right? But you look at this thing and there's just nothing, right? If you've ever been on a ship, it's nothing all the way around you. You never know quite how scary it is, the prospect of being lost, until you're at sea. So how the hell do you navigate at sea? Well, there's actually a set of skills involved. You guys have probably heard you navigate by the stars, right? You guys know how that works? Because I'm going to tell you, you're going to have like a, oh God, don't say that. I'll keep your secret. Right? It's geometry. Geometry. Oh. You guys know what a triangle is, right? Yes, we've heard of a triangle. First grade, actually, that's kindergarten. So, here, man, you guys are. Come on, anyways. That's not funny, but never told it again. Anyways, so imagine we have a boat, right? And I realize that the virtual reality 3D appearance of this boat is like, oh man, that's really.
Don't worry, you are safe in the classroom. All right. So let's say we got a star, and then we've got, I don't know, something. Let's say kind of like a lighthouse. Whatever. That's kind of like a stick. Whatever. I don't know. Okay. Hey, we can make it a happy little tree. The biggest tree in the world. It's like 15 times bigger than the ship. This is the world tree.
Is that supposed to be in the ocean?
But don't you judge my art. Alright? This is a painting that's speech. It could be whatever. It could be a rock, it could be a dolphin. Anything that stays stuck on. Anyways. What you do is you can triangulate, is the word triangle, your distance. You guys know the Pythagorean theorem? Yeah. So basically, you can tell how distant you are from something based upon your 2 points, 3 points together. That's triangulation. That's how you figure out your latitude. Latitude is this. Longitude is essentially guessing. Guessing? Yes, believe it or not, because they had no real way of knowing how to calculate longitude. That doesn't quite work with the mathematics. Instead, you have to use a process called dead reckoning, because if you get it wrong, you're dead. Cheery, I see. But here's how it works. First off, you guys know what an hourglass is. You know how much time you can tell with an hourglass?
An hour.
Yeah, that's literally what it means. It's a glass that tells an hour. It's got sanded. You flip it down. Once it's got all the way to the bottom, an hour has passed. It's a basic chronometer. Okay, so we know how, if we keep flipping that, what time it is, right? You can even kind of set guess that by the position of the moon and the sun and the stars and all that stuff. But anyways, we know what time it is. We can know how long it takes for an hour to pass. Cool. You guys know how you tell how fast you're going on a ship? Okay, you use what's called a chip log. I realize that sounds like something dirty, but it's chit, C-H-I-T, not a different word. And you use it, it basically looks like a kite, but it's made of wood. And the idea is you throw this wood, basically anchored into the water, and it's tied to a reel of rope that has knots tied into it. And so basically what happens is you say, go, you throw the chit log, someone else starts timing, and after 15 seconds, you pull in the chit log, and as you pull it back, you count how many knots have slipped through your fingers. The knots are the extrapolated mathematical calculation of a nautical mile. So for each knot you pull back, that's 1 nautical mile. So how fast is a nautical mile? It's about a mile per hour, give or take. It's close. So if you have a ship that's going 12 knots, that's a decent clip. That's a decent speed to be going. So let's say, for instance, you have gone 12 knots in 1 hour, right? That means you know that we have gone 12 knots. So this begs the question, which direction did we go? Well, there's this handy-dandy little device that can tell you that. You guys know what it is? A compass, right. So if you have a compass, you can count the distance, and then you have a board called a dead reckoning board, which looks a bit like a dartboard. So I'm going to use this as an example. Only instead of 20 points at the top, imagine this is north, this is south, east, and west, and then we have the parts kind of in the middle, so we have northeast, and we have southeast, and then we have southwest and northwest, and then it gets even finer detail than that. Like, if you get really, really technical with the compass, you can actually designate exactly where something is, because you have, for instance, like 2 points north by west, and it's sailor chart, I'm not worried about. But anyways, let's say that for the first hour on our dead reckoning board, we went due north. So we put our first dot right there. Okay? And let's say for the second hour we were sailing, we went north again. So we make logger. But the third hour, we completely changed direction. We went due east. So we mark it like that. And then let's say the second hour, or the fourth hour, we did the same. So what happens is, after a period of time, you're going to have the navigator on the ship, it's called the sailing master, who's going to look at this, and they're going to get out their sea chart, which is basically a map with extra information on it. And so they know that we started here, right? And then for 2 hours, we were going 12 knots. We went north. So that's 24, that puts us right here. And then we went the same distance east. So that makes our new position here, right? That's dead reckoning. Is it very exact or precise? No. In fact, one of the things that you have to consider is whenever you're on sea, or on the sea, it's not just the wind that's moving. It's also the waves, it's the currents. So you can be completely wrong, and if you're wrong, you might wind up running aground on a hidden coral reef or something else in the ocean. So this was a perilous freaking type of journey. The other thing we have to consider, other than navigation, is the actual type of construction we have. Because a big deal whenever you're harnessing the wind is how you go about harnessing the wind. One of the easiest ways of imagining sailing is blowing against your hand. I don't know if you guys have ever had like a toy boat, like a toy sailboat, you blow on it and it moves, right? Well, if you're directly behind the wind, it's really easy. It's called a broad reach. You're just kind of going with the wind. But what happens if you have to go a different direction? If the wind is going this way, but you want to go this way, can you still sail? Yes, you can. A good way of imagining is like if you're blowing on your hand like this, but then you turn it this way. You're not really getting any wind. So what you have to do is you physically turn the sails and reset them. That's called tacking. You're tacking the sails, or tacking the ship, as the case may be. And the thing is, when the Portuguese were looking into actually doing all this, they needed a new type of ship, because in most of Europe, they use square sails, which are pretty good for catching a lot of wind when it's at a broad reach, but aren't as good at tacking. You don't get as much wind whenever you're tacking. But the Arabs, and indeed throughout the Middle East, throughout Asia, they use triangle-shaped sails called lateen sails. So what the Portuguese did is they invented a new type of ship called a caravel, which combined these two types of sails, so it was more reliable on the ocean. In addition, they were using it was actually a Greek device initially, but the Arabs sort of perfected it, called the astrolabe, which you use to get this information for determining your latitude at sea using the stars. Basically, it's a disc that you can move things around and use it, and then you do a math calculation to figure out exactly where you are. So this navigation equipment, this new type of ship, that was necessary for the next step. But we have another problem. The other problem we have is that ship stores, keeping food and water for sailors, isn't an easy thing to do. You guys know, how do we preserve food? Like today, what do we use? Like how do we keep your groceries from spoiling? That's one way. We can refrigerate things, keep it at a lower temperature so it stays better longer. What else? What's that? Yeah. Sure. Well, I mean, preservatives, sure. Yeah. But you guys know one of the most basic preservatives there is? Salt. You salt something well enough, it stays longer. Also, you could smoke things. Think bacon. Right? It's smoked, salted meat. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of different types of bacon, which sounds really disgusting, but it's actually fantastic. Like jowl bacon. I say that word, people go, ugh, no, it's good stuff. It's tasty. But here's the thing: there's other methods as well. Pickling is another one. You basically put it in a brine, and pickling can be amazing. That being said, if you don't like pickles, after all, pickles are cucumbers soaked in evil. So the last thing we can do is preserve it in booze. Essentially, alcohol is a preservative, believe it or not. True story. You guys know fruitcake? Like fruitcake? Anyone like fruitcake? I'm not going to judge you if you do. I just don't personally. I don't know what people do. But I've also been told that's because we don't make good fruitcake in America. I don't know how true that is, but whatever. But here's how you basically make it. You take a really, really dense bread that's sweetened. That's basically what cake is. But it's dense so that you don't have the chances of it going moldy.
then you add into it alcohol. You cover it in brandy. And the reason is alcohol is antibacterial. You guys know this, I'm assuming, because if you've ever had a cut or a scrape, you've cleaned it out with an alcohol wipe. Same basic principle. The only real difference is like rubbing alcohol is like super concentrated alcohol. You know, it'll basically kill you if you drink that straight or make you look wine. Whereas the other stuff, it's not as potent. I mean, alcohol is a poison. I'm sure you guys know that. It's just that we like to poison ourselves for fun. It seems really weird to say that, but if you think about it, all drugs are essentially poisons. They kill you if you have too much of them. But we take just enough just for fun. Caffeine is probably the big example of that. And yes, caffeine will kill you in higher doses. We've got to preserve food. Even if we preserve it, we only have so much room on board a ship. I mean, remember, we're trying to bring stuff back, too. We don't just want to fill a ship with food and set it on its way. And that being said, it will eventually spoil. So imagine eating food that is a month old, right? Most of us will throw stuff out of our fridge after a week. So getting fresh supplies is a big concern. So this is where our first guy comes up with a solution to this problem. His name was Henry the Navigator. He was actually the Prince of Portugal, which is a fun word to say, Prince of Portugal. It's like, pop, P-O-P, Prince of Portugal, Prince of Portugal, Prince of Portugal. I think that'd be a good name for a car rental place. I don't know why. I'd like a Ford Explorer, please, from Prince of Portugal. You got it. Anyway. So Henry the Navigator, he was Prince of Portugal. Proposed the use of outposts or forts. You guys know what a fort is, right? You probably made one out of a pillow or pillows. So you made a fort out of one pillow. That's what origami nonsense that is.
Did you say that Henry the Navigator was?
Yes, I did say he was Prince of Portugal. See, it's fun to say. Everyday conversation. You know, it's like our code word. We become best friends. So he wanted to seek around using forts. So basically the idea is we're going to set up an area that is like a gas station. You show up, get some fresh water, get some fresh food, and load stuff off. And let me tell you this, after being a month or several at sea, sailors would eat pretty much anything. Like, it's kind of hard to see where some of these legends of the ocean come from. For instance, you guys know the whole story about manatees being the legend where mermaids came from? And people are like, dude, really? Mermaid? How? But here's the thing is, if you have a bunch of dudes on a ship for like 10 months, you just lose your mind. This is the long and the short of it. People go a little crazy. But anyway, wait for that later. But add into this fact that, it was a hard life. Sailing on the seas was pretty tough. I'll leave that. But one thing I will say is kind of interesting is that they ate some pretty interesting stuff. For instance, sea turtle was actually a prized food, which, may seem a little weird, but at the same time, remember, people still eat turtles today, turtle soup, things like that. So, whatever. But once food was brought on, they could continue on the journey. But here the Navigator never made it all the way to India. In fact, he didn't even make it halfway there. The first guy there was Bartholomew Dias. He made it to the Cape of Good Hope, which you guys know is the southern tip of Africa. And the first guy to make it was Vasco da Gama, or Vasco da Gama. He reached there after 10 months. That was one way, by the way. So if you're going to go there and back again, that's almost 2 years. Now just think about that for a second. 2 years to get from point A to point B. That's incredible. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine being away from home that long. But this meant that a sailor, when they signed up for an expedition somewhere from India, they were basically signing 2 years of their life away. Now, in exchange for this, they would be given room and board aboard the ship. So they'd be given food, they'd be given liquor, they'd be given basic supplies, clothes, that sort of thing to make it to the journey. And they'd be given a portion of whatever the ship made on its return voyage. So if you made it all the way back, whatever money that the ship made on their voyage, you could get a cut of that, which could be a hefty sum. Or to put it one way, imagine if I gave you 2 years of pay once you were done with this voyage. I'm not paying you the entire time you're gone. I'm paying you with food, supplies, that sort of thing.
once you get home, then I'm giving you money. And it's 2 years worth of pay. So to put that in today's standards, if I gave you the average sum for like, an office job, 30,000 over 2 years, or 30,000 times 2 years, 60,000, go, here you go, here's $60,000. Do whatever you want. What are you going to do with that money? Right? You're going to party, right? In all honesty, I mean, granted, a lot of sailors had families, but if you didn't, you are going to literally be the life of the party until your money runs out. And that's exactly what sailors did. They had a reputation for drinking, for doing things we probably shouldn't mention. You can use your imagination. And, other fun activities until you ran out of money, and then just signing up for another ship and doing it all over again. That was your life. Another big reason to kind of motivate sailors to do this is, keep in mind, most people didn't have freedom of transportation. The vast majority of people wouldn't travel more than 10 miles over the course of their entire life. That means the farthest they'd ever go from the place they were born was 10 miles. Most of you guys probably do more than that just to get to school every day, So the idea that you get to go thousands of miles and see places like you've never even heard of before, that's a big draw. I mean, hell, look at people joining the Navy today. Get to visit all kinds of crazy places. I know people who have been to Japan, who've been to the United Arab Emirates, been throughout Africa, all over the place because they joined the Navy and never would have gone any other way. So, I mean, there is a big motivation for doing this, even though I realize that seems like a really hard life, and to be frank, it was. In fact, it was almost like each ship became a community. People who were part of a ship were almost part of a brotherhood that extended beyond their time serving on board the ship. Sailors had their own basic jargon, their way of speaking that, sort of set them apart. Certain behaviors and traditions. One of the things that is kind of funny is if you look at movies about pirates today, a lot of the jargon that gets used in those had a specific meaning, but gets used weirdly a lot of times. What's funny is like the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie especially made fun of that. So for instance, if you look at the scene where William Turner and Captain Jack Sparrow go and take over the Interceptor at the very beginning of the first movie, what happens is Johnny Depp comes down and he says, "Nobody panic, we are taking over the ship." And Orlando Bloom jumps on and says, "I, Avast!" And everybody kind of laughs at him. Well, here's why. I, as I'm sure you guys have probably know, just means yes. So, if you say, like, do this on board ship, and captain says do something, you go, "Aye, sir," and you go do it. I, not so much done. That wasn't necessary. It's like, yes, yes. Are you stuttering? What's the matter with you? You need to go sick bay? Aye. Okay. Next, Avast. Okay, so Avast was an expression that basically meant look. So, like, Avast, which is funny also because vast, or Avast also means, like, stop. So, vast rowing would be like stop rowing, vast yelling, whatever, So basically what he's saying when he leaps down is stop, yes, or yes, stop. Which is like, dude doesn't even know what he's talking about. This is the worst pirate in the world, And so that's kind of they're laughing about because people in pirate movies use this crap all the time. It's like, no, like, yeah, sounds piratey, whatever. And the thing is, every single part of the ship has a name. And, like, there's some pretty weird names on the ship, like Jib, Solace, and that stuff. The one that always made me go, what? The most was a part called the Cat Stopper. Now, I've got a friend who actually did sail on board one of these sailing ships, old-fashioned wood one, did for like 9 months. And so, dude is a sailor legit for real. Like, sails, like the sails and all. And so I asked him one time, I was like, what does the Cat Stopper do on a ship? Like, thinking he could explain the mechanism or whatever. And he goes, well, it stops the cats. Like, no kidding. What is the cat? Like, because I hear cat, I'm like, meow. It's like, is it a cage? What's up with that? He's like, no. The Cat Stopper, okay, so the cat is actually part of the anchor, right? And so whenever you're weighing anchor, when you're pulling it up,
you have to stop it from hitting the side of the ship. Because if you just keep pulling it, it's going to pulley, it's actually going to come over into the pulley and basically bang up the side of your ship and damage the gun. So we don't want that to happen. So you stop it and you lash it down so it doesn't go banging around. Okay, that makes sense. Right. But it doesn't make sense unless you know what a cat is. So everything kind of builds up that way. So it's kind of an interesting, kind of lifestyle. We'll talk more about that later. I think that's probably good for today because I didn't get much farther than this with first or second period. So we're going to stop there, I think. We'll finish up first this section tomorrow. So if you guys would be so kind, go ahead and start work on chapter 1 section, or chapter 3 section 1, excuse me, so that we can have that homework done for tomorrow, and then we'll get this fall practical acting. Okay? Awesome. All right, thank you. And I will stop the recording